persisted in their fight for justice. The conviction and life sentences of Navari Henderson that were handed down today for very brutal attacks of violence in this community. These sentences are a testament to the resilience of those survivors and to the dedication of the public servants that stand behind me and that worked these cases. Today's sentence is not just a victory for those survivors, but for every single survivor who continues to fight for justice. This team that I stand with today strategically presented a clear and compelling case of this defendant's culpability. And let me just briefly explain the facts of each of these cases to underscore the gravity of this defendant's actions and the hard work of the people behind me. Action number one, on December 28th, 2016, a victim was jogging. And let me just say this, if there's children watching or if anyone is triggered by any discussion of, and we all should be triggered. I just want to make sure there's a little bit of a warning in case there's some kids that might be in the room when anybody's watching this. On December 28th, 2016, the victim was jogging on a paved path atop of the Mississippi River along Algiers Point. When she was physically grabbed by this defendant, forced down the backside of the levee, he beat her, he threatened to kill her if she screamed, and throughout this horrific attack, the defendant subjected her to repeated and relentless violence, including choking her, striking her in the face, and making threats of more violence if she resisted. The victim's bravery was remarkable. She fought back and wounded this defendant, which likely saved her life, although in doing so, she suffered severe injuries, including a dislocated hip, a fractured wrist, a broken nose. The injuries to her wrist and nose required surgery, and after the attacker left her in that mangled condition, she managed to crawl back up to the top of the levee, despite her extensive injuries. I want to commend the response of NOPD officers Kevin Richardson, Marion Mickey, and Lester Arno, whose work played a critical role in preserving the evidence and assisting this survivor. We also want to recognize a Good Samaritan who acted quickly and aided in what may have, that very small gesture might have saved a life that day. We want to thank that Good Samaritan. Every intervention, an act of compassion matters in situations like these. Act number two of this defendant. On August 1st of 2018, the defendant targeted another woman as she was exiting an Uber after walking a friend home. He approached her from behind, he threatened her, he led her behind an 18-wheeler near a dumpster where he choked her until she lost consciousness. When she regained consciousness, the defendant was raping her, and as she drifted in and out, he stole personal items from her, including her cell phone and cash. She was 6 months pregnant at the time, and she has endured severe trauma and anxiety and has profoundly lost trust in her fellow human beings from this attack. The DNA evidence found on this survivor was pivotal in linking Henderson to this crime. We express gratitude to NOP detectives Claudia Bruce, who's in training right now, Herman Franklin, Officer Kenyatta Phillips, and Officer Markia Duncan for their diligent work in investigating this case thoroughly and supporting the victim throughout an incredibly harrowing process. Action number three, on October 7th of 2019, this defendant's violence took the form of domestic abuse. He punched his then girlfriend in the face with a closed fist, knocking her unconscious. When she regained consciousness, she was in immense pain with fractures in her jaw and cheekbone. Now, this domestic violence survivor later disclosed that this was not an isolated incident, highlighting the devastating pattern of domestic violence that culminated in this brutal attack. Tragically, she lost her pregnancy following that assault. This incident is a horrible reminder that the domestic violence that happens behind closed doors of some homes doesn't just stay there, but it spills out into our neighborhoods as well. Officer Antonio Charles's swift response was crucial in documenting this incident and beginning the investigation that will contribute to Henderson's ultimate conviction. St. Nurse Heidi Martin, who is standing with us today, is one of those truly unsung heroes that really never gets credit for her roles in these cases. They're often the first point of contact for a survivor after a horrible incident. And they go through painstaking measures to preserve evidence. And you got to understand, in a case like this, the body of a survivor is that crime scene. They're asked not to shower, they're asked not to brush their teeth, which seems and is re-traumatizing. But every single part of the survivor's body is a part of that crime scene, and say nurses like Heidi Martin collect that evidence under the brutal light of those fluorescent lights in a hospital room. And it doesn't happen quickly. So anyone that suggests that, that false reports are a norm, they should sit with a sane nurse to understand just how re-traumatizing and how detailed and how long that part of an investigation goes by a non-biased third party that is only collecting evidence and rendering care. The dedication and professionalism that is shown by these specific officers and these healthcare providers and these detectives is truly commendable. They embody the relentless pursuit of justice that this city needs to combat the scourge of sexual violence. And I want to say to each survivor in this case and in any case, you are seen and you are believed, and your bravery cannot be overstated. The steps that the survivors took in their own cases here impacted their own stories, but they also impacted other people in this community. Because you see, this type of crime is one that people tend to repeat. So I want to thank these survivors, and I want them to know that they not only have motivated the people in this office, but they protected the people of this community. Our SACI team and the Special Victims Unit have continued to seize every single opportunity to build on their expertise to handle these sensitive cases and give them the care that they deserve. SACI in particular has revived long dormant cold cases with the use of science and cutting-edge analysis, helping to elevate those voices of survivors long after they've initially stepped up and told their stories. I want to bring up the chief of our SACI unit and our SVU unit, Mary Glass, so you can hear from her directly. Mary's leadership in this space has helped countless survivors, and it has also helped this unit achieve a high rate of success while cultivating strong relationships with survivors in this community and with other stakeholders. Mary?
Thank you. Sexual assault cases and intimate partner violence cases are inherently difficult to prosecute. The state was successful today in large part due to the bravery of the two women who testified and to the one woman that didn't but was brave enough to call the police and tell them what had happened to her. Many of these cases fail because victims feel like they're not going to be believed, they're afraid to come forward, they're afraid they're going to be shamed or blamed for what happened to them because of the nature of these types of crimes. Rape and domestic violence are too real. These incidents were horrifically violent. I am saddened by the defense accusations that one victim be considered less believable than another. Every victim is heard by this office, and I hope one day that every victim is heard and believed.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you for your work with your team. The acts of courage of these survivors illuminate the hope that we need as we tackle the pervasive crisis of sexual violence that we're in. The statistics are staggering and disappointing. A lot of times we as Americans point at other countries and we say that they should do better. But the statistics in our own country clearly show that more than 2/3 of sexual assaults go unreported because of the behavior and the way that these things are handled, just as Mary just described to you. This means that for every case we bring to justice, there are countless more survivors who find themselves unable or unsupported to come forward. Even when cases are reported, only a fraction of them result in arrest and convictions. This absolutely has to change. The conviction of Henderson is a crucial step, but it gets us nowhere near the finishing line. The offenses he committed reflect the most vile dimensions of abuse, targeting unsuspecting women, leveraging trust and familiarity of those known, and exploiting moments of vulnerability in all cases. The stories of these survivors are not unique. We must remember that predators like this do not act in isolation, and they thrive when a system or a culture allows silence and inaction to persist. Which brings me to a call for action. We need comprehensive strategies that not only focus on rigorous investigation and prosecution, but also ensure robust survivor support and proactive prevention measures. This includes strengthening reporting mechanisms. Survivors must feel safe and confident when they report. Colleges, and law enforcement must see their place in this work. Agencies need to embrace regular trauma-informed training so that survivors are not met with a misunderstanding or a lack of professionalism on their very first contact. Every instance of contact with a survivor is important to reassure or to not trigger a bad response or the wrong response. Reassurance has to be the rule of the day. Number two, increasing resources for sexual assault investigations. The men and women in blue who do this work are too few. We don't have enough people dedicated to this type of violence. We've got a pretty robust homicide unit. We don't have enough folks there, but we certainly don't have enough people in blue focused on sexual violence. This requires us to find those force multipliers, expanding the use of forensic technologies like advanced DNA analysis, and ensuring timely processing of sexual assault kits. As demonstrated in the Henderson case, it was his scientific diligence that ultimately connected him to other cases. I spoke recently at the City Council about supporting the work of Dr. Kelly and getting our crime lab up across the street. We've got to do that so that we're not slowing down when these trials can happen, just waiting on DNA results. And it also allows us to connect repeat offenders. Number three, support services for survivors. Healing has to go beyond convictions. Just because Mr. Henderson will be in jail for the rest of his life does not fix what he broke. Survivors need comprehensive services from mental health support to legal assistance. This office is committed to collaborating with victim advocates and healthcare providers and nonprofits to bolster these critical safety needs. Organizations like STAR, who are going to find their funding cut soon because of reporting errors in this particular municipality. Covenant House, the FJC, the Morgan Ray Center of Hope at Children's Hospital, all places where survivors find themselves in those initial critical hours. Community partnerships and education. Prevention starts with education. This is not a woman issue. This is a human being issue. And we need all of our human beings, even our little human beings, being educated in what consent is and what consent is not, what respect is and what respect is not, and the importance of bystander intervention. For our part, we want to ensure that we do everything in our power to facilitate robust information sharing, to inform policy updates and improve training, even when there is not a direct mandate. So with that being said, I know that we are almost to the place of substantial compliance with the NOPD. We want to do everything we can to get them there because no department has met all of these benchmarks the way that the people of the NOPD have. And so we're committing ourselves to formally crafting with the NOPD a memorandum of understanding that we will share with Judge Morgan as she navigates this consent decree to track information related to outcomes at every stage of domestic violence, and we're going to expand that into the sex crimes space as well. This collaborative data sharing process and after-action review will help all of us do our jobs better. To any survivor that has not come forward, know this. This office, alongside our partners in law enforcement and victim support, will be fighting for you. Reporting is an act of courage, and we will do everything within our power to safeguard that courage against retaliation or further trauma. We also know that there's more work to be done. This city, like many across the nation, must confront the reality that crimes against women and children have not historically gotten the attention and focus that they deserve. This office is committed to work with the NOPD to reverse that course. We thought it was important to talk to the public today, to let anyone know who might have been victimized by Mr. Henderson in that Algiers Point neighborhood, who were not able to bring themselves to come forward, to know that he is behind bars. You know the dates of these offenses. You know the patterns of his particular type of violence. And if you were a victim of that violence and you didn't come forward, you can rest assured that that Algiers Point area, that Levy area, is safer now than it was before. Thank you to this trial team, led by my chief, Mary Glass, ADA Megan Falcon, ADA Penny Kissinger, Investigator Dave Bonelli, Victim Support Manager Ariel White, Tanya Poire, who used to be with that unit when this case started, who is now working in our Human Resources Department, and to our littlest member and our furriest member, Carissa Justice, who always does an amazing job of making our survivors feel just a little bit better when they're going through the worst days of their life. Your dedication makes this work possible. To the survivors, I have to go back to you again. We stand with you. We will be here for you. And to every citizen of New Orleans, remember the pain we honor. We honor that resilience. We honor that pain that has been dealt out to survivors. And we will press forward with them with urgency and resolve. Any questions?
Question. The defense brought up Henderson's abuse in the home when he was a child, possible intellectual disabilities, but it was also sentencing today, I think by you, Ms. Glass, how whilst other people in the world may have similar issues, they do not go on to commit crimes such as this. To hear that brought up and used it as a defense for a crime that you've said, Jason, is brutal and heinous, what are the thoughts from the DA's office?
You know, we see a lot of defense arguments and strategies. A court of law is dealing with a certain set of facts. And when you look at the facts surrounding this utter terror that he unleashed on a neighborhood and unsuspecting people who were walking with friends or jogging, what may or may not have happened may be something he can deal with for the rest of his life in jail, but it does not absolve him or mitigate the harm and terror that he caused to these women. One woman lost a child. All of them lost their collective trust in humanity. But let me let you hear from our chief, who studied this issue in great detail.
Thank you. The defendant's actions in this case were very deliberate. They were acts of someone thinking and desiring to do what he pleased with absolutely no mercy to the victims he was injuring. The doctor on the stand today admitted that most people that are assaulted or abused as a child do not go on to commit violence. It's not an excuse. And his actions, we maintain, were completely thought out, planned, and deliberate. He hurt these women on purpose, and he hurt them over and over and over again. He didn't just choose to rob someone. He didn't just choose to hit someone one time. He went until each of these women could have died.
Anything else, Silver?
Yes. This last question is also directly to you, Mary. So when I was in the courtroom, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I remember, there were two rape victims, and only one of those cases was their conviction, and that was the woman who was raped on the levee. You had alluded to people not believing the second victim, and she was also a sex worker. Do you think that had any influence on the jury's decision?
Well, let me be clear. The jury came back guilty as charged on the 2016 case, counts 1 and 2. Those were the 2 life sentences. The second incident involved 3 counts of rape, kidnapping, and a brutal robbery, a robbery with injury. The jury came back with the robbery with injury, and they came back not guilty on the conviction, on the kidnapping and the assault. But the jury was incorrect. I don't know what exactly they were thinking, but this victim was not a sex worker. That is something that the defense said. That is something that he did not provide any proof of. That is something that he could not corroborate. He just said it out loud to see if it stuck. Hence what I said earlier about a lot of women not choosing to come forward because they're afraid that they're not going to be believed, and even worse, they're going to be called names. They're going to be called trash. They're going to be demoralized. And what happened in those counts we believe is incorrect, but he was found guilty of robbing and beating her. We're very proud that she came forward, and we stand by her, and we believe her.
I think it's really important that we all recognize as a community, as a country, regardless of whatever label might be placed on a person, whatever job they may do, that doesn't change anything about consent, right? And there's just so much to unpack as it relates to sex crimes in the criminal legal system and how they're treated. You know, that's why they're so difficult to prove. People always want to judge a survivor of a sexual assault. But I was a victim of a carjacking. Nobody asked me what color the car was, whether it was washed, what it looked like. Nobody asked me what I was wearing, right? So violence is violence. But for some reason, when it comes to gender-based violence or the violence against children or violence against women, there seems to be a lot of harmful myths in the world. And we've got to unpack that. We've got to do better.
Anything from the issue?
One more question. The domestic violence part of this, I know we got 1 year for that particular crime. Is that enough, seeing as that domestic violence was so brutal and that woman did lose the child?
Not for me, you know, and I know not for her, and certainly not for that unborn child and his father. You know, we were here just a few days ago talking about a domestic violence case that didn't result, that a pattern of domestic violence where there was very little accountability, little if no jail time. And in this particular situation, he brutalized a person that he called his partner to the point that she lost her child, and the sentence was 1 year. I certainly believe he deserved the maximum penalty as it relates to that charge as well. He's going to be serving the rest of his life in jail, but, you know, I'm sure it matters to that survivor because her life will never be the same.
One other question. Are you able to talk about the progress on addressing the backlog of rape kits at Louisiana State Police crime lab? I know we had gotten additional funding for that, and we were maybe on track to have that cleared by the end of the year. Is that still happening?
You know, I pray that it is. The lawyers behind me and the investigators with them and the nurses who go through all of that work to collect that information, they don't collect it for it to go sit and be warehoused for years. They want it to be used in court. And I'm hopeful that we're working through that backlog. We hit a significant snag in the sense that a lot of other parishes are in the same situation that are relying on the state police, which means the backlog has only been growing more since that commitment from the city council, which I greatly appreciate. But more recently, we've had cases where the state police have had to actually send the testing out to out-of-town labs that increase our costs because now we've got to pay for those experts to come in and testify. And, you know, obviously, that's going to create a whole new problem So this is a problem that still needs to be dealt with, and the only real fix is to make sure that Dr. Kelly's crime lab next door is fully funded, and that every piece of equipment, every employee she needs is brought to bear, so that when that place opens up, they can handle sexual assault cases faster than we've seen them handled so far. Thanks, everybody.